common experience for many of us over the Christmas holiday is gathering with family. This often includes seeing babies, children, and youth who we might not have seen for a long time. And then we exclaim that familiar phrase, "Wow, I can't believe how much she has grown since I saw her last." It truly is amazing to watch the developmental leaps that children make over short amounts of time. Our surprise at the growth of children mirrors the speed at which we move through the Christmas season in the liturgical calendar. From Christmas Day through the following 12 days of Christmas, we're meant to adore and celebrate the baby, Jesus. To contemplate the gift of God come to earth in a defenseless infant and to hold space in our hearts for that child. To embrace the way that God's vulnerable incarnation gives us permission to embrace our own vulnerability. But we don't stay there for long. Today is Epiphany Sunday, the end of the Christmas season. Today we are propelled out of the season of baby Jesus, and we find ourselves exclaiming in response to the text, "I can't believe he's grown up so fast." Luke chapter 2 challenges us to deal with Jesus' brisk maturation and its implications for our own faith development. In Luke's gospel, Jesus and his family make pilgrimage to Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover festival. This is the remembrance of the Exodus story where God liberated Jesus' ancestors from Egypt. As practicing Jews, Mary, Joseph, and Jesus would have taken this holy trip every year. It is significant in this story that Jesus is 12 years old. In Judaism at that time, 12 was the end of childhood, and 13 was when a youth would begin to more rigorously study the scriptures. In other words, Luke wants us to know that Jesus is on the precipice of young adulthood. I believe that the text invites us here to primarily identify with Mary and Joseph. While in some stories it's useful to ask, how can I relate to Jesus in this passage? Instead, today, our story invites us to ask, how might I respond to Jesus in this story? The text is about us responding to Jesus' actions and words as if we were watching them unfold in front of us. With this framework in mind, the passage reveals some important points to us. Mary and Joseph held a preconceived notion about who Jesus was, and this notion was disrupted in our story. After the Passover, we heard the couple journeys with their caravan away from Jerusalem, but then they notice Jesus is not with them. They return to Jerusalem to search for Jesus. It's worth pondering, why did it take Mary and Joseph 3 days to look in the temple for Jesus? Like, where were they looking? Maybe Jesus hadn't shown much interest in his religious life up to that time, and they thought, nah, he's not in the temple. Or maybe, perhaps more likely, Mary and Joseph had not noticed Jesus' emerging love for God and this identification with his particular path. Either way, they do find him in the temple, and then Jesus speaks his first words of the whole gospel. In reply to his mother's frustration about him running off, Jesus says, "Why were you searching for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" The original Greek translation of that phrase, "my Father's house," is enticingly ambiguous. While Jesus could be talking about a physical place, presumably the temple, it could just as easily be translated, "my Father's business," as in, quote, "the things of God." In other words, the heart of Jesus' response is this: did you not know that I must be giving myself to God's business? We're told that Mary and Joseph do not understand what Jesus meant. The parents and we onlookers were just getting comfortable with the baby Jesus. This baby who is relatively easy to nurture and control and keep safe. But suddenly we're told, buckle up, because Jesus is growing up. beyond our definitions and beyond our plans for him. For Mary and Joseph, Jesus was not where he thought that they would be, and he also was not who they thought that he would be. And so the text confronts us with this question. If we join Mary and Joseph in this story, how will we respond to the unfolding revelation of a Jesus beyond our control? A Jesus who is fully identified with the work of God and who's commanding us to step into that work as well. We could go through religious rituals every week here in this sanctuary. We can attend our religious festivals like Christmas and Easter services every year. And these aren't bad in themselves. Please keep coming back to St. Andrew's. But like Mary and Joseph, it's possible for us to engage in these outward religious activities while failing to notice that Jesus is on the move and we've missed his call to us. Just as Jesus started as a baby 12 days ago, each of us started with our own baby faith, our infant faith, which is not wrong. We have to start somewhere. The liturgical year affirms the importance of our faith in its infancy. But the liturgical year also tells us that God is not satisfied with our faith staying in the manger. What does it look like for you to keep growing up? What does it look like for you to follow Jesus into this difficult work of God's business? Growing up is hard. I'm still trying to grow up. We're all going to be trying to grow up our whole lives. We grow up by beginning to take seriously our own self-care and advocating for ourselves. We grow up through the difficult work of taking responsibility for our actions. We grow up by being liberated from people-pleasing. We grow up by taking real risks and committing to real communities and real relationships. We grow up by learning to age well and embrace the changes that are happening in our lives and the lives of the people that we love. It's hard. What does it look like for you to keep growing up in your faith? Whether you're 2 or 92, what does that look like? God gives us free will, and we must choose whether to cling to that faith of our childhood or to follow Jesus into adult faith ever deeper. But even though we must exercise our own free will, the good news of this text is that we never have to do this work alone. Jesus, you might have noticed, even at 12, has this undeniable intimacy with God, this sense of God's unconditional grace. That's why his first words refer to God with this most intimate language, Abba, God, which means mommy, daddy. It's this intimate language of trusting child and parent. That grace, that relationship is available to all of us on this journey. And further, Jesus is fully embedded in a supportive community as he's growing up. His development is only possible because of these elders in the temple who dialogue with him, and because of Mary and Joseph, who the story tells us take him home and accompany him and support him all the way through his maturation. Just like God is available to you, community is also available to you as you grow. Yes, we must grow up and follow Jesus into maturity, but neither Jesus nor we are asked to grow up alone. And the last good piece of news is this. Mary and Joseph did not have to understand in order to grow up and follow. You might have noticed the story ends with a lack of resolution. Jesus has proclaimed his true identity and called his parents to get on board. And they are left confused and pondering. Yet that confusion does not disqualify them from walking with Jesus. As I stare into 2025, there are so many things I do not understand. How can we rebuild trust and heal our democracy? Why is there so much anger, conflict, and pain around gender in our country? And how can we care for people of all genders? What is happening to the institutional church? And how can we faithfully sustain St. Andrew's as an institution for future generations? We do not have to have the answers to these questions. God does not ask us to have the answers. God only asks us now to imitate Mary and Joseph, to choose to grow up with Jesus as we follow him into these uncertainties with faith. Christ has been born, and Christ is growing up inside of us. May we join him in giving ourselves to God's business in this new year. Amen.